Okay, I'm going to do a little demo on what to do if you've drawn your anything, basically if you've drawn something in traditional materials like with pencil or charcoal. Scan your drawings, and if your drawing is too big for your scanner, you can draw it, just scan it in several parts, and using Photoshop, you'll be able to go through File, Automate, Photo Merge, the very bottom of that list, and browsing for your files, you can add, here's my two files right here. Um, right here. So it's going to be all the way down at the bottom because they're the newest ones. There's half, that's one half of the drawing, and this is the other half of the drawing. And so I choose those two images and add them to Photoshop under the Automate, and it will automatically create a panorama of the images as long as you've overlapped the scans enough that there is some information overlapping. It will blend the 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 images together. It can be upside down, backwards, sideways, twisted, crooked, whatever. Photoshop still is able to put them together seamlessly. So once I've done that, I've merged them together, used levels to brighten them up a bit, and now they are a single layer. The layer is pretty big, so I'm going to go ahead and resize it because it's at 600 dpi, which is way overkill for our purposes. Take that down to 72. Say OK. Now, turn this layer into a multiply layer, and then make a new layer that goes underneath that layer. And you'll find out very quickly that you can actually draw with your tablet or with your mouse. There's two ways to do this. I'm going to show you two different ways. With the layer being a multiply layer, you can put color under the layer, and it makes it a lot easier to color because you're not coloring over your drawings. So I use the lasso, magnify, and I can, not magnify, I'm sorry, it's magnetic lasso. You just touch it, and then you just move your mouse around, and it will find the edge of greatest contrast and create a selection for you. And it's not always perfect. Sometimes it's very not perfect, but you can check the selection by using the quick mask, and that's hit the letter Q, and you will see that what is masked out is in red, and what is open is going to be in clear. So you can switch to a brush or the eraser, and by using white, you can actually uncover more of the mask if you need to. And using black, you can remove from this selection what isn't needed. So I just want the top of the skull, the upper part of the skull for this. I'm going to include the teeth though. So there's my selection. Release the quick mask with the letter Q. You can see the quick mask is indicated right up here. Then I can take a color, any old color. Let me just pick a color. There. We'll use blue. And edit, fill with foreground color, blue. And as you can see, by using the multiply, Control D to deselect, by using the multiply, you're not worried about having this color over your drawing. So if I, instead of doing it on top where it would have, obliterated everything, I can do it underneath and it comes through just fine. as a coloration. It makes it a lot easier to do your colors. So in the same way, you could do it, like I said, you can do it by selection, or you can just do it by painting. So you could take your tablet or your mouse, if you prefer to draw with a mouse, and using the brush and the color on the color layer, which is right here. I want to use the colored layer like that. You can actually color in whatever color it is you want to use to match up your skull parts. So we're trying to color code the different parts of the animal and the human so that they match up. This is a lot easier, I think, than colored pencils or felt tip pens or whatever, and a little cleaner too. I'll scroll out a little bit and you can see those two match up quite nicely. So you can go through each one of the parts that you want to color and connect from one to the other. By coloring on the second layer, you can preserve your line work, but still easily color what's behind it. So I'm coloring the pelvis right now. And I'm going to color the same part of the pelvis, this little piece right there, on the animal, right there. So you want to make sure that for every body part that you're selecting, you're actually coloring the matching body part from the animal to the human. That's what this whole piece of this whole task is about. It's just doing the comparative anatomy from one part of parts of the animal to the human. So that was the scapula, and this is the scapula. And if you find the colors are a little overwhelming, you can always reduce their opacity just by changing the opacity of the layer like so. So it's not quite so overwhelming. Once you get all of your pieces in there, then you can use the text tool, which is so much nicer than most people's handwriting, and label. And this is cranium here. Whoops. Scapula. Please use real medical terminology, not shoulder blade. We want scapula. This is the scapula. This is not the hips, but the pelvis. And this is also pelvis. Once you get your images all labeled, each part labeled, you can make another layer on top and use maybe a red, and the brush tool, making a small brush, you can actually click and point. If you can click, hold the shift key and drag, you'll get a line in one direction, up or down, or across, depending which way you drag. And if you click, let go of the mouse, place your cursor in the next where you want it to go, click shift, you can get a little key that marks to it. Another way to do it is to use the Shape tool and select the line tool from the Shape tool. And under the gear box, you can actually have an arrowhead, which is kind of nice. So you can easily just draw a arrow, and I want it to be red. So I'm going to turn off the stroke and just fill it with red, like red, red. Even what's nice about using the line tool is once you've done all of your lines to your body parts, like so, you can still go back and change the line. You can change the color, but using the arrow tool will allow you to select the path. I'm going to free transform the path, rotating it here and move it here so that it points to the pelvis correctly. Now I did turn off the outline, but say I decided I wanted to have an outline after all. So I'm going to put the stroke on there and turn that down to just a 1-point stroke. I have a little black arrow around my little black line around my arrow, makes it nice and clean. And that is essentially how you do that. So I'm looking for identical body parts with matching colors and clean, well labeled. The hand labeled stuff, unless you have really great handwriting, don't do it by hand. Just do it with the text tool and make sure it looks really good. When you're all done, you can save it for yourself as a PSD, and like so. Better to save it as a Photoshop file. I'm going to call this compare, and then save it as a JPEG. So you can, oops, it'd be nice if I could spell it correctly. Save it as a copy, JPEG, like so, and then post that in the classroom.